Good morning. Thanks, Charles. Thanks for everybody for joining this morning. Again, my name is Chris Tejas. As Charles mentioned, graduated with him in 2008 from CAPLA, and I worked in Tucson for a little while upon graduating. But currently, I am in the Bay Area, and I have had my own practice now for about 2.5 years. And so I'm just going to kind of start off showing some projects from both my previous firm that I worked for and also work that I'm currently doing in my own practice. So this is a small bagel shop that it was one of my first projects actually when I went out on my own. And this bagel shop was actually came about during the pandemic. The owner, she was from the East Coast. She was working in advertising, ended up getting laid off, and was always just looking for a good New York style bagel out here in the West Coast, and couldn't really find one. So she started experimenting on her own in her own kitchen. Eventually opened a little pop-up at a farmer's market in Oakland, and then lucky enough, she contacted me to help her bring her vision to her first brick and mortar location. And so it's called Poppy Bagels. And this is a rendering of what the exterior design was looking like. This is the actual space. And this opened, they're coming up on their 1-year anniversary here pretty soon. So, but again, it's fun working with these. I work a lot with, like Limon, the Peruvian restaurant, a much more established restaurateur brand. They've been around 20 plus years, but I also work with like Lisa, who's the owner of Poppy Bagels, who, never been in the restaurant industry. This is her first time, really jumping into this. And so, it's fun kind of having that different levels of experience and clients, and kind of, in this instance, of course, helping guide her and giving her advice on how to execute a project like this. And so, this project obviously a lot more playful, getting these little fun elements of poppies and this kind of hex tile motif. But yeah, one of my favorite projects, one of my favorite clients. This is a project that recently opened. This is something that I've been working on. I'm working with a Peruvian restaurant brand here in the Bay Area. They've been around since early 2000s, a pretty well-established Peruvian restaurant called Limon. And I've been kind of helping them rebrand themselves. And so this project, which is in Mountain View, which is kind of down south, kind of Silicon Valley area near Palo Alto, was the first restaurant we did. And it's kind of really bringing in a little bit more upscale vibe to their food and to the environment. Before it was a little bit more casual, but they're really trying to elevate their experience. And so it's been a lot of fun working with them and their team and their branding team. This is another one that we're working on right now that's actually under construction. This one's in Redwood City, California, but probably going to open in the next few months. But these are some renderings that I've done for the project. But it's really fun kind of working. They have a branding team down in Peru, so it's fun, getting on calls with them and seeing what they're developing on the branding side, and kind of take elements like that and get them into the architecture, kind of something like this, where this L on this backlit laser cut metal pattern, this is one of their logos. And so kind of simple little items like that, taking that and developing that into the architecture kind of really reinforces the brand. This is kind of a rendering of the main dining area. There's a little ceviche, so we're gonna be making ceviches here, almost like a sushi counter, but ceviche style. But you can kind of sit there and be, again, more immersed in the atmosphere, what's going on. There's that backlit laser cut panel that I was talking about also. this is, again, kind of it's much more moody vibe than what their current restaurants are, but they're, like I said, they're really trying to elevate what they're trying to do. And so another little aspect of kind of not only a design element, but an education element. They have an artist in Peru that's created these, there's 5 of these rather large pieces of art, and each one of them is unique and distinct to a specific geographic area in Peru. It kind of starts to educate about, and this one specifically is about the Sierra Alta, so like the high mountains of Peru and the Andes and stuff like that. So kind of, again, implementing kind of fun and playful, but also educational elements like that are fun. And then always got to kind of have a little fun, you know, design the bathrooms. And so this is the men's bathroom, and kind of, again, dark and moody. But on the contrasting side, the women's is, you know, got the same kind of elements and schemes, but it's a little bit more fun.
Maybe I'd be curious to open the floor for a minute here, but then I think I've got some sort of a list of questions about sort of your path here that we could move on to, but I'd be curious to hear if anyone has any immediate questions based on what they've seen.
I have a question.
Yeah,
sure, go ahead.
Oh, all right. Hey, Chris, thanks for showing us some of your work. I wanted to ask in regards to Poppy's Bagels. You mentioned that was kind of your first project on your own. This person reached out to you. How did the owner of this soon-to-be bagel shop kind of hear about you, or did you know this person beforehand, or was this something you had kind of advertised or put on social media or something?
Yeah, no, I did not know the person. I knew of her and Poppy because I lived in the area, and I had gone to the farmer's market and had her delicious bagels, but I did not know her. A lot of my projects, almost exclusively, all my projects come from word of mouth, from usually from consultants or from contractors, and so a lot of clients, especially like first-time clients like Poppy, like I had said, she had never done this before. A lot of their first call usually is to a general contractor because they don't really know what the first step is. You know, they just figure, hey, I want to open a restaurant. I'm gonna get a contractor, and it's gonna be quick and easy. 3-4 months and be open. And so they usually call a contractor first, and then of course pretty quickly the contractor's like, yeah, you need an architect. You need a bunch of probably consultants. You know, there's all these steps that need to take place. You know, from design, layout, permitting, all that stuff. And so a lot of my new projects that come in are from word of mouth from either contractors, food service consultants as well, because I am exclusively in restaurants. If a client is not calling a general contractor, they're calling a food service designer, which is basically like a kitchen designer, right? They're the ones that are helping lay out the kitchen, specify equipment and stuff like that. So, you know, I have a few great consultants that I work with, and I get a lot of referrals from them as well.
So, so while you pitch the idea to the clients, so you need to like show your ideas in terms of renders. So like, how do you decide how many renders would be fine to pitch the idea? And when there is, for example, if you decide that you have to give like 2 renders or 2 views from this angle, and if there is any changes in the eventually, then do you also like charge extra?
As far as like design changes, like, you know, over my years working both at, you know, a bigger firm and by myself, like, you know, I've learned to structure contracts. You got to be pretty specific in your contracts, you know, and so like in the schematic design phase of my contracts, you know, I will put pretty specific bullet points of, you know, this phase covers 2 rounds of revisions, right? So 2 or 3, or, you know, it depends. And so, you know, of course, and when I'm discussing a contract with the client, I make note of that to them and make sure they understand that, so they know that, you know, after that that second round or third round that, you know, there's going to be additional services for further design changes. And also, like, you know, once they kind of sign off on the design, right, and they're like, everything looks great, we move into construction documents phase. You know, I have another bullet point there in the contract that says, hey, if all of a sudden you guys change your mind and you want to start, you know, go back and look at the design of the bar again or something like that, you know, it's an additional service, because, you know, we've already moved on, or I've already moved on to producing construction documents based on this approved design. And so we go back then, you know, it takes more time, more money, you know, it delays the schedule. So just having to really, you know, explain that, and more importantly, put it in the contract, you know, it's not the fun, sexy part of architecture, but, you know, I've screwed up in the past. You know, I've had contracts that are not well written and not clear, and, you know, I've certainly been burned, and that happens, but it's, you know, it's just a learning process.
So I'm curious, particularly, what was the I don't know, maybe it's a final straw, or the moment when you decided that going out on your own and sort of managing projects and taking on all that extra responsibility was the right move? And I guess what steps did you take to get yourself set up for success?
One of the main drivers for going out on my own is that I felt like I had gotten so far away from the architecture, right? Like I was a true project manager, right? Like
right.
I really would never have time to even just like sit down and you know, and sketch, and which I love doing, and, you know, figure out details and things like that. You know, I was so overwhelmed that I was just managing staff below me. I was managing the client. I was managing, you know, consultant communication. And so for me, it just got to the point I was like, I want to be able to design again and lay out a restaurant and, you know, look at materials and light fixtures and all that stuff. And so
yeah, that's an interesting point. I have felt that way several times, where, you know, as you get higher up in an organization, it becomes more and more about that management aspect. And then at a certain point, you just ask yourself, it's like, would I be better off working at Raytheon, where I'd basically be doing the exact same thing, but you don't really design the missile or the building in that case. You're just talking to different people and making sure that the right people are talking to each other. So sort of that crisis of faith.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same point, I mean, at the same time, it's like there are people out there that love just being a project manager, right? Like, and that's okay. I mean, it's not for me, but I mean, I know plenty of people that are just like, I don't want to do anything with design. I'll manage people. I'll manage a client, like, you know, and they're completely content doing that. And so it's, you know, everybody has their own path. As far as kind of setting myself up for success, I mean, you know, and to the question earlier about where I get all, you know, where I get a lot of my referrals and projects, a lot of the consultants and contractors that I work for at WDA, you know, of course, I just, you know, having those contacts really made the transition a lot easier, right? Because just drafted an email, say, hey, I'm going on my own, you know, you guys know any projects? And luckily, you know, you nurture those relationships over the years, you know, and they learn to, you know, to trust you, and, you know, you can execute a project really well.
Okay, so I guess my last question would be whether you have any advice for students sort of in the middle of their education. You guys are in your third year. There's also grad students in your coming to the marketplace next year. I'd just be curious if and maybe you don't, if you have any specific advice.
Yeah, I mean, I would maybe two bits of advice. I mean, for sure, I would just like get out there, like just, you know, if summer's coming up or whatever, you know, like try and get into a firm. And more specifically, if you are able to get into a firm and work, like really advocate for yourself to have them take you out on site visits, because you learn so much from just seeing projects under construction. You know, even if you go out to a site with them and, you know, they're going to be busy doing other things related to construction, having a meeting, but like even just being there to shadow them and hear, you know, what they're talking about, or even just like look at the way things are, you know, being put together. You know, some of my most valuable experiences are being, you know, as I was kind of emerging in the profession, we're just being on site and learning about construction more than anything, and the sequencing of that. The other advice I would say is just like, you know, it's a huge profession, like it's a huge discipline, and there's so many avenues and routes that you can go in architecture. I mean, obviously I've very narrowed in on you know, my niche, my path, you know, but there's just keep an open mind and of the different project types, and you know, if you have a passion, try and follow that, but also don't be afraid to, you know, advocate and maybe move to a different firm that has different project types, or, you know, something that you're interested in working on. So yeah, it's just a huge profession, and there's a lot to learn, and you know, it just takes time. It takes a long time to understand the ins and outs of design and build and permitting, and it's just massive. It's just a massive bank of knowledge, you know, to become an architect.
I guess I would just say thank you again. This is very interesting, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and talk to us. So much appreciated.